Sterling Hayes, a brilliant AI prodigy haunted by a painful past, left Google to join Vanguard Innovations, bringing with her the revolutionary idea of CyberGuard, a groundbreaking cybersecurity system. The loss of a loved one in a devastating cyber attack drives her to pour her heart into CyberGuard, an intelligent shield designed to predict and neutralize threats before they erupt. For 15 months, Sterling works tirelessly, but the polished smile of CEO Oscar Vance sparks her suspicion. Will her dream be recognized, or will she be ensnared in a lurking conspiracy? CyberGuard is more than technology, it's Sterling's vow to herself, and an unexpected secret will soon turn everything upside down. Sterling always believed her work could rewrite the rules of cybersecurity, a conviction forged in the ashes of personal tragedy. The death of her brother, Ethan, in a brutal cyber attack that crippled a hospital's systems, left a scar that never healed. Leaving the cushy stability of Google for Vanguard Innovations wasn't just a career move, it was a vow she made to herself, that no one else would endure the pain she had. CyberGuard, her brainchild, wasn't just a system, it was a sentinel, a commitment etched into every line of code to outsmart threats before they could strike. For 15 months, Sterling poured her soul into the project, nights blending into days as she honed its ability to predict and neutralize attacks with an almost human finesse. The glass walls of Vanguard's Silicon Valley office became her sanctuary, the hum of servers her lullaby. But beneath her fierce focus, a quiet unease simmered. Oscar Vance, the charismatic CEO whose smile never reached his eyes, lingered too long during progress updates, his questions too sharp, his praise too slick. She brushed it off, convincing herself it was just the zeal of a visionary leader. After all, Vanguard was her chance to bring CyberGuard to life. How could she doubt the man who promised to make it soar? The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that feels ordinary until it becomes historic. Sterling sat in the lab, fingers trembling with excitement as she reviewed the results of CyberGuard's latest simulation. The system didn't just thwart a sophisticated attack, designed to mimic the chaos of a state-level hack, it also detected vulnerabilities in the test network Sterling hadn't even programmed it to find. It was as if CyberGuard had developed an intuition, a sixth sense for danger. Her heart pounded, this was the moment she'd dreamed of, proof her vision could change the world. She pictured Ethan's proud smile, the way he used to tease her for being too smart for her own good. Brimming with pride, she drafted an email to Oscar, requesting a meeting to share the results. His assistant, Lila, replied within minutes, scheduling a 15-minute slot for the next afternoon. That night, Sterling barely slept, her mind racing with visions of CyberGuard's future, contracts with global banks, protection for critical infrastructure, a legacy that would outlive her. The next day, Sterling entered Oscar's office, clutching her laptop like a shield. The room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and stark minimalist decor, felt colder than usual. Oscar sat behind his desk, his tailored suit impeccable, but his expression was unreadable, a mask of corporate calm. What caught her off guard was the presence of Claire Morton, Vanguard's legal counsel, standing beside him with a calculated, professional smile. "Sterling, please sit," Oscar said, gesturing to a chair that felt like an invisible barrier. The air was thick with something unspoken, and Sterling's stomach twisted. She sat, fingers gripping her laptop, ready to unveil CyberGuard's triumph. But before she could speak, Oscar slid a document across the desk, its crisp white pages gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "We need to discuss your employment contract," he said, his voice smooth as honed steel. Claire cleared her throat, her tone dry and emotionless. Section 12.4 of your contract states that any intellectual property developed using Vanguard's resources belongs exclusively to the company. Sterling's breath caught, her mind racing to process the words. She'd anticipated a discussion about IP terms, every tech company had them, but this felt different, predatory. "I understand standard terms," she said, her voice steady despite the growing dread. "But CyberGuard was my idea before I joined Vanguard. I have notes, sketches, even a prototype from my time at Google. It's all documented." Claire's eyes flickered, but her face remained impassive. "While you may have had an initial concept," she replied, "the completed system was built here, with Vanguard's time and resources. Legally, it's ours." Oscar leaned forward, his friendly mask slipping to reveal a calculating gaze. Let's be clear, Sterling. CyberGuard belongs to Vanguard. The board appreciates your contribution, and we've prepared a generous compensation package. He paused, letting generous hang in the air like a mockery. When CyberGuard launches, you'll receive a one-time payment of $250,000. That's well above industry standards for a project like this. The number hit Sterling like a punch, a laughably small sum compared to the billions she knew CyberGuard could be worth. Her vision blurred, not with tears but with a burning rage threatening to consume her. 15 months of late nights, skipped meals, and pouring her grief and genius into CyberGuard, reduced to $250,000. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms as she fought to stay composed. Compensation, she repeated, her voice low and dangerous. Oscar's smile faltered, like a predator sensing resistance. Tomorrow, I'm presenting CyberGuard to top investors, he continued, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her. We expect to raise $50 million in funding. Then, we'll announce Vanguard's revolutionary cybersecurity solution to the world. Claire interjected, her voice cutting through the tense air. Effective immediately, we're terminating your contract. Security will escort you to clear out your desk. The finality of her words stabbed Sterling's chest. She stared at Oscar, searching for a trace of the man who'd called her work inspired, but all she saw was ambition, cold and unrelenting. Her mind flashed back to Ethan, to the hospital monitors going dark as hackers locked the system. CyberGuard was supposed to be her redemption, a way to ensure no one else lost what she had. Now, Oscar was stealing it, not just her work, but her purpose. She wanted to scream, to flip the desk, to demand justice. But something deeper, sharper, held her back. 6 months ago, she caught Oscar accessing her secure server without permission, a breach that triggered an alert she'd embedded in the code. From that moment, she'd begun building safeguards, not just against external threats but against enemies within. CyberGuard wasn't just a shield for networks, it was her shield. Sterling nodded, her face a mask of calm. Of course, Mr. Vance, she said, her voice eerily serene. She handed over her laptop, its weight a silent promise. Security escorted her to her desk, their eyes boring into her as she packed a cardboard box, a photo of Ethan, a worn notebook, a half-dead plant. Colleagues lipped away, their silence louder than words. As she stepped out of Vanguard's glass doors, the rain from the day before had stopped, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt. Sterling clutched the box, her heart a battlefield of betrayal and resolve. Oscar thought he'd won, that he could erase her from her own creation. But he didn't know about the code she'd woven into CyberGuard's core, a silent sentinel ready to awaken at the perfect moment. Tomorrow's investor demo wouldn't just be a presentation, it would be a reckoning. Oscar Vance's betrayal, with his icy smile and declaration that CyberGuard, her dream forged through sleepless nights, belonged to the company, taught Sterling a bitter lesson: trust is the most fragile thing in the tech world. But Sterling wasn't one to be broken. Beneath the calm exterior as she left the gleaming glass building, a resolute fire burned. 6 months earlier, a shocking discovery had changed everything, and since then, she'd quietly woven a web of protection. Not just for CyberGuard but for herself. Now, as Oscar thought he'd secured his victory, Sterling knew she was one step ahead, not through anger, but through meticulous preparation and a secret that could shake Vanguard to its core. It began late one night in the lab, the blue glow of computer screens illuminating Sterling's tired face. A small notification blinked in the corner of her monitor, an alert from the security system she'd embedded in CyberGuard's data vault. Someone had tried accessing the secure server after hours, using a high-level admin account. Her heart raced, not with fear but with a chilling premonition. She traced the intrusion, and the name that appeared stunned her: Oscar Vance. He hadn't just peeked at the data, he'd attempted to download CyberGuard's core source code. Nothing was taken, but the act felt like a thief testing a lock before breaking in. Sterling sat there, in the dark with only the hum of servers, feeling the sting of betrayal for the first time. She thought of Ethan, of his final days in the hospital when a cyber attack stole his chance at life. CyberGuard was her promise to him, and the idea Oscar could steal it made her tremble with rage. But Sterling didn't act on emotion. She'd learned from years in tech that impulsiveness only led to failure. Instead, she channeled her pain into fuel, her doubt into a weapon. From that night, she began building a second layer of protection for CyberGuard, a hidden shield even Vanguard's tech team didn't know about. The system was programmed to monitor not just external threats, like hackers or malware, but also internal anomalies, like unauthorized access, data tampering, or shady transactions within the company network. She called it the Sentinel Protocol, a name only she understood, evoking the image of a sleepless guardian. Every line of code she wrote was a thread in the web, every algorithm an arrow ready to fire when the time came. The process wasn't easy. In the weeks that followed, Sterling worked in secret, often staying in the lab until dawn when Vanguard's halls were empty. She masked her efforts with fake progress reports, convincing Oscar and his team she was just a diligent engineer with no suspicions. But each night, as she coded the Sentinel Protocol, she felt a deep connection to CyberGuard. It wasn't just technology, it was part of her, carrying memories of Ethan and her resolve to protect what she'd built. There were moments, when the screen's glare burned her eyes, that she wondered if she was becoming paranoid. But then she'd recall Oscar's piercing gaze, sharp as a blade, and she knew her doubts weren't delusions. What surprised Sterling most was a chance discovery while reviewing access logs. A hidden file in the server, carefully encrypted, contained emails between Oscar and an unidentified third party. Though she couldn't fully decrypt it, the fragmented text revealed a terrifying truth: Oscar was seemingly planning to sell Vanguard's customer data, sensitive information from CyberGuard's test partners, for a massive payout. Her blood ran hot, not just for the betrayal against her but for the millions who could be harmed if that data leaked. The secret was a ticking bomb, but Sterling chose not to act immediately. Instead, she integrated a mechanism into the Sentinel Protocol, allowing CyberGuard to automatically analyze and report any unethical behavior within the internal network. She didn't know this mechanism would become her most powerful weapon, a blade sharper than she could have imagined. Sterling's emotions during these months were a tempest. Some nights, she sat at her screen, hands shaking as she thought of Ethan, of the promise she'd etched into her heart. There were moments she wanted to confront Oscar, to scream that she knew everything. But she held back, knowing the time wasn't right. Her patience was forged by pain, by years of blaming herself for failing to save Ethan. CyberGuard wasn't just a security system, it was her redemption, and she wouldn't let it fall into hands like Oscar's. She began backing up every detail of CyberGuard's development, handwritten notes, code snapshots, in an encrypted drive, hidden safely outside Vanguard's office. If Oscar wanted to play legal games, she'd be ready to fight back. When the Sentinel Protocol was complete, Sterling felt an odd calm. She turned CyberGuard into an entity that wasn't just intelligent but ethical, a guardian that protected not only networks but itself. She embedded a special code, triggered if she were removed from the authentication chain, a scenario she hoped would never happen but her instincts warned might. This code would flag any suspicious internal actions as threats, generating detailed reports and, if necessary, exposing them. It was her ace, a hidden shield Oscar couldn't anticipate. The night before the fateful demo, as Sterling sat in her apartment with city lights twinkling through the window, she felt no fear. She held Ethan's photo, her fingers tracing his smile. "I won't let them take it, Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. CyberGuard was ready, and so was she. The secret about Oscar, though she didn't know its full scope, was waiting to be unveiled. She didn't know exactly what would happen at the demo, but she trusted her system, her creation, infused with her soul, to speak for her. As she set the photo down and sipped her tea, a faint smile crossed her lips. Oscar might think he held all the cards, but Sterling had built a fortress, and that fortress was about to fight. The rain had stopped, but the night sky hung heavy, as if waiting for something to explode. Sterling sat in her small apartment, the streetlights glow slipping through the blinds, illuminating Ethan's photo on the table. She was no longer the naive woman who'd trusted Vanguard blindly, nor the engineer who just kept her head down coding. 6 months of preparation, weaving the Sentinel protocol in secret, had transformed her into a silent warrior, ready to face the man who tried to steal her dream. When her phone buzzed at 9:30 p.m., Lila's urgent voice crackled through. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Vance needs to see you now. A car's on its way." Sterling gave a faint smile, not out of joy but because she'd been waiting for this moment. She stood, smoothed her coat, and stepped out, her heart beating steady like a war drum. 40 minutes later, Sterling stood in Vanguard's sleek boardroom, the harsh white lights highlighting the strain on Oscar's face. He sat at the head of the table, his shirt rumpled, tie askew, hair disheveled as if a storm had swept through. Gone was the smug CEO who'd declared CyberGuard Vanguard's property. In his place was a man grappling with panic. "Fix it," Oscar growled the moment the door closed, his voice sharp as a blade. "You sabotaged the system, Sterling. Fix it now." Sterling sat slowly, deliberately dragging out each movement, her calm gaze making Oscar fidget. "Sabotage?" she asked, her voice soft but cutting like a thin knife. "I left yesterday, under security's watch. I took no devices, accessed no systems. How could I sabotage anything?" Oscar slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing in the silent room. "Don't play games, Sterling." During today's test, CyberGuard crashed completely. It flagged our internal network as a threat, generated thousands of false reports, and then, he paused, a flicker of fear in his eyes. Sterling tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "And then what?" Oscar gritted his teeth, as if each word was a blow to his pride. "It displayed a report, on the main screen. Publicly. Saying I was involved in selling customer data illegally. Emails, transaction logs, it was all there." Sterling's heart raced, not with fear but with awe. The Sentinel protocol, the safeguard she'd built into CyberGuard, hadn't just detected suspicious activity, it had exposed it, right in front of the entire tech team. The secret she'd only glimpsed in the server logs had become a bomb, detonating in Oscar's face. She kept her face blank, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. The pain of losing Ethan, the months of sacrifice, Oscar's betrayal, it all surged, mingling with a strange feeling, pride. CyberGuard wasn't just a tool, it was the embodiment of the ethics she'd instilled, a sentinel that refused to tolerate any threat, external or internal. "Sounds like a technical issue," she said, her voice even, almost taunting. "Have you tried restarting it?" Oscar's face flushed red, and he shot to his feet, pointing at her. "This isn't a joke. We have 12 major investors coming tomorrow. $50 million is on the line. If you don't fix this, I'll sue you." Sterling gave a small smile, letting a hint of ice show. "Sue me? Or will that report send itself to the investors, along with the SEC?" Her words were a blade, and Oscar froze. He took a deep breath, trying to reclaim his usual confidence, but his eyes betrayed desperation. When he spoke again, his tone softened, carrying the cadence of a man negotiating for survival. "Maybe we were hasty yesterday," he said, his hands clasped to hide their trembling. "I'm willing to offer a fairer deal. Co-creator status, a bigger payout, even equity in the company." Sterling leaned back, crossing her arms, her gaze piercing him. "What exactly happened during the test?" Oscar hesitated, then reluctantly explained. The system activated itself, flagging everything, from internal servers to admin accounts, as threats. Then it generated that report, with evidence, of things that shouldn't exist. It called it an internal ethical breach. Sterling couldn't suppress a small smile. CyberGuard had done exactly what she'd designed it to do, identify threats, whether from hackers or a greedy CEO. But its public exposure of Oscar's shady dealings, transactions she'd only glimpsed, was something she hadn't anticipated. The system had learned, adapted, and was now protecting not just networks but the innocent users Oscar had betrayed. "I didn't sabotage anything," she said, her voice calm but sharp as steel. "CyberGuard is designed to protect, and it's doing its job. If it sees an internal threat, maybe you should ask yourself why." Oscar paled, the truth dawning in his eyes. The system wasn't broken, it had seen through him. He tried to regain control, his voice shaky. "What do you want, Sterling? Money? Power?" She looked straight at him, her heart a furnace, burning but controlled. "I want what I deserve," she said, each word a bullet. Recognition as CyberGuard's primary creator. 50% of the intellectual property rights. A board seat to ensure the system is used ethically. $10 million in compensation for trying to push me out. And you'll publicly apologize, committing to investigate the ethical breaches CyberGuard uncovered. Silence blanketed the room, heavy as the air before a storm. Oscar stared at her, his eyes flickering between anger and fear. Finally, with a bitter sigh, he nodded. "Fine," he said, his voice hoarse. Sterling pulled a small USB drive from her pocket and placed it on the table between them. "This is an authentication update," she said. "It'll resolve the immediate issue, get CyberGuard running again. Consider it a goodwill gesture for our new partnership." She emphasized partnership, making Oscar flinch. As she stood, she felt a new strength in every step. CyberGuard wasn't just her creation, it was her voice, her justice. The secret about Oscar, now exposed by the system she'd built, was proof she'd been right to never let her guard down. She left the boardroom, her gaze steady, but her heart heavy. She thought of Ethan, of what she'd fought to protect. Tomorrow, the demo would go on, and CyberGuard would shine, but this time, it would shine under Sterling Hayes' name. The first rays of morning sunlight streamed through the glass walls of Vanguard Innovations headquarters, bathing Sterling's new office in a warm golden glow. Just hours after the tense showdown in the cold boardroom, where she'd forced Oscar Vance to acknowledge her worth, Sterling had become co-founder and chief technology officer, CTO, of the company. The board seat, 50% intellectual property rights to CyberGuard. And $10 million in compensation weren't just a victory. They were proof she'd reclaimed what was hers, not through force but through intellect and unrelenting resolve. But as she stood by the window, looking out over the bustling Silicon Valley, her heart wasn't entirely at ease. The journey of CyberGuard and her own was only beginning. And the lessons from the storm she'd weathered still echoed, like a call from the past. From Ethan's shadow, the brother she'd vowed to protect the world for. In the weeks that followed, Sterling threw herself into shaping CyberGuard's future with renewed dedication. She didn't just refine the system to ensure it performed flawlessly at the investor demo, a dazzling presentation that left executives in awe and secured $50 million in funding. She also embedded strict ethical protocols. CyberGuard was now more than a shield against cyber attacks, it was a gatekeeper, programmed to detect and prevent any misuse, whether from external hackers or internal bad actors. Every deployment came with transparency mechanisms, ensuring user data was protected and no one, not even CEOs like Oscar, could exploit it. Sterling called these protocols Ethan's Creed, a name she kept to herself, a reminder that technology was only trustworthy when it served humanity, not greed. CyberGuard's success came fast and loud. 3 months later, the system was commercially deployed for an international bank, where it thwarted a massive cyber attack, saving billions of dollars and millions of customers from data theft. The news spread, and Vanguard Innovations was valued at $4 billion, becoming a tech industry star. Sterling, once seen as an engineer easily sidelined, was now the face of innovation, invited to speak at global conferences. But in quiet moments, standing on stages before thousands of eyes, she didn't see the glow of fame. She saw Ethan, his smile in an old photo, and she knew every spotlight belonged to him, to the promise she'd kept. Her relationship with Oscar was a different story, a delicate balance of professionalism and tension. After the successful demo, Oscar had to introduce Sterling to investors as CyberGuard's creator, his voice stiff, his eyes reluctant. Once, in an empty hallway, he tried to make small talk, his tone tinged with remorse. "We can put the past behind us, Sterling," he said, but she just looked at him, her gaze cold as steel. "CyberGuard doesn't forget, and neither do I," she replied, then walked away, leaving him with heavy silence. The board, after investigating the shady transaction CyberGuard exposed, curtailed Oscar's power, forcing him to focus on business development rather than meddling in tech. Sterling, as CTO, became the innovation leader, a role no one dared challenge. They weren't friends and never would be, but they reached an equilibrium, like two players on a chessboard, each knowing the other's limits. Sterling's emotions in these days were a deep, complex river. One evening, in her new office with its glass wall overlooking the horizon, she opened a drawer and pulled out Ethan's photo. She touched his face, tears falling silently, not from pain but from a release she'd never known. "See, Ethan," she whispered. "I did it. No one took it." Her smile mingled with tears, a moment where she felt him there, proud and at peace. CyberGuard wasn't just her triumph over Oscar, it was how she healed her past wounds, each line of code a step toward overcoming loss. The biggest lesson Sterling learned wasn't about tech but about people. She realized that the strength of any system, whether AI or one's own life, lies in its ability to protect itself while staying ethical. CyberGuard, with Ethan's creed, was proof that technology is only as good as the people guiding it. She began sharing her story, not to boast but to warn. In a speech at a tech conference, her voice rang out, strong yet sincere. "I used to think technology was the answer to everything," she said. "But tech is only as strong as we are. Don't let anyone steal your dreams, but don't let your dreams become tools to harm others." Sterling's call didn't stop at the stage. She posted online, sharing her journey with a rawness that touched hearts. "I almost lost everything," she wrote, "but I learned you have to be your own first gatekeeper. Build shields, not just for your work but for your values." She invited others to share their stories, of betrayal, of standing up, of finding strength to protect what mattered. She challenged them to look at their lives, to identify where to draw lines, where to demand recognition. "You don't need a CyberGuard to win," she wrote. "You just need to believe you're worth it." As Sterling gazed out at the world from her office, she saw a future where CyberGuard didn't just protect networks but inspired a new generation, creators ready to stand up for themselves. She thought of Ethan, of what she'd built, and a quiet peace spread through her. CyberGuard was her legacy, but more than that, it was a reminder that even in darkness, the light of resilience always finds a way. Sterling's journey ignites a fire. Protect your dreams and values, no matter who the enemy is, outside or by your side. You are your own first warrior, building shields with resilience, setting firm boundaries, and never letting anyone dim the light you create. Prepare like Sterling, turn challenges into strength, and stand up to claim what's yours. Right now, look at your life. Where's the battlefield you need to fight on? Like, comment, subscribe, share your story to spread the inspiration. Every interaction fuels us to create even more explosive content.